Now, what he argues, it's because of the stimulus that the economy is going to recover. But there's no way that can be true. In 2010, the stimulus spends about $200 billion in 1 year. That's in a $14.2 trillion economy. There is no way, ladies and gentlemen, no way that that relatively insignificant amount of spending, although I think it's too much and a waste, but insignificant as a proportion of the economy, is going to make the difference between a recession from which we may never recover and fairly robust growth of 3.2%. So intellectually honest supporters of Obama's stimulus program, like Paul Krugman, basically admit this. It's too small to make a difference, to make a major difference. So, one, it's ineffectual. Two, it's cynical. Most people, when they're confronted with a crisis, their first reaction and first instinct is to want to solve the crisis, not to exploit the crisis, which is exactly what the Obama administration is doing. In the immortal words of Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste. And that has been the operating theory of the early Obama administration. FDR, I oppose a lot of his policies. I think they are counterproductive, but I give him credit because when he took office during a crisis and during a banking meltdown, what is the first thing he dealt with? It was the banking meltdown. And he immediately worked to restore confidence in the banking system and was successful in that. Then he went on to pursue policies that I believe actually delayed recovery. But in a financial crisis, deal with the financial crisis first. And that's not what the Obama administration has done. It put out the huge stimulus plan first, then it put out its huge budget, then it came out with a plan on the financial crisis. Why? Because it wanted to shove through as much spending as possible, as quickly as possible, before dealing with the politically difficult and politically delicate issue of the financial system. And even now, it's an extremely convoluted plan, mostly, I believe, to hide the cost of the financial plan because it would be unpopular. So that is cynical. There are a couple ways. Three, that it's dishonest. One, it hides another $2.3 trillion of debt, according to the CBO, that it doesn't honestly account for. Two, Obama pretends he's cutting taxes for middle-class taxpayers, as he promised in the campaign, when his program calls for a cap-and-trade system that will be a massive new tax on the American economy. It'll affect everyone who pays utility bills and will wipe out the effect of that tax credit. And in fact, he's probably raising taxes on most people. And the third dishonesty is to pretend that this massive program can be balanced on the backs of the top 5% of the American people, and it just can't. Finally, it's irresponsible. We have an entitlement crunch coming in this country. The last thing we should be doing is unnecessarily piling red ink on, which is exactly what we're doing now. Now, to answer the question, I know Glees is very nervous. I think the economy probably will recover in the near term. What the Federal Reserve has been doing will make the difference. It's pumping as much liquidity into the system as possible. And what Obama is doing is laying up problems for the future in the form of inflation that is a terrible thief that hits the pocketbooks of every middle-class American, and he's creating levels of debt that he himself says in the long term is unsustainable. So am I alarmed? Yes, I'm alarmed. Am I despairing? No, because I take heart from the great statement of Bismarck, who reportedly once said, "God looks after fools, drunkards, and the United States of America, and he better." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. Katrina, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Where do I begin? Let me begin by first saying it is an honor to be here with you tonight. I know this beautiful church has seen many extraordinary people speak: Eleanor Roosevelt, Robert Kennedy, Winston Churchill, and their courage and fighting spirit is needed now more than ever at a time when we face the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. The investor Warren Buffett has said we suffered an economic Pearl Harbor, or as my 17-year-old daughter likes to say, we're in big-time trouble. I speak with some humility this evening on the resolution posed. One of my heroes is the great late economist John Kenneth Galbraith, whose debates with the late William Buckley were the gold standard of debates. And he once said, John Kenneth Galbraith, that the only function of economic forecasting is to make astrology look respectable. The historian Gary Wills once said that Americans think of government only as a necessary evil, a last resort. Well, folks, all the other resorts are boarded up. There is no alternative to President Obama's economic recovery plan and his budget, except deepening recession and an accelerating global economic crisis. Consumers are cutting back, employers aren't investing, laying off workers, exports have collapsed, state and local governments are squeezed. One out of every 10 people in this good state are jobless. Your unemployment rate is 12%. The national unemployment rate is at its highest in over 25 years. The only thing that will lift and kickstart this economy, get people back to work, provide the demand we need, avert a deepening economic crisis, is spending at the federal level. And President Obama's recovery plan and budget provide the most expansive, breathtaking unleashing of government fiscal firepower in the face of a recession since World War II. I will come back to the misuse and abuse of history which Rich Lowry has inflicted on the New Deal and Franklin Delano Roosevelt in my later remarks, but there is a need to get the economy going, and Barack Obama's budget and stimulus, or recovery plan as I call it, is doing that. Now, of course, there is also a need to recapitalize banks to get credit flowing. Obama's bank bailout may work, but I share the view of millions that it is a banker's first bailout. It's a too-sweet deal for them, rewarding the very people who got us into this mess. And standing here in Michigan, it's hard not to say that the contrast between how the auto industry is being treated and the banks gives new meaning to the term double standard. I give the bank bailout a C. I hate to do this grading, but I will. If we're going to give grades as we approach the 100 days mark, but I want to say I give an A minus to the recovery, budget, and investment policies. No plan is perfect, but what's clear is that even an imperfect plan, as I said, is desperately needed when we're seeing the largest monthly job losses in over 3 decades. And what's encouraging is that unlike the former occupant of the White House, I think this administration is open-minded and understands that there is a possibility of rethinking and not hunkering down in a bunker. And it understands that we need not only short-term relief, but a long-term plan for recovery and reconstruction. Talk about cynicism for a moment. The Republicans who indict Obama for raising spending and deficits bequeathed fully $1.4 trillion of the Obama deficit of the $1.8 trillion that the Congressional Budget Office projects for fiscal year 2009. Their newfound fiscal probity is worthless. It's worth less than a drunkard's morning after regret. We have suffered through fiscal policies which have made us less secure, through tax cuts for the richest, no sacrifice. Their plans have had no clue, no decency, and one lesson to be drawn as we invest in our economy's recovery and growth is an important lesson at this moment. For so long we have lived with the mantra that markets can do no wrong. We are living in the rubble of a system in which markets were left to themselves, unregulated,